don't be afraid to divert your own path from the herd. So there's this idea of, oh, I got this great degree, I got to go work in finance or iBanking or consulting, and this is from my own personal experience, just to share with you. And you know, and that's what I did. I thought I knew what I wanted to do, so I hopped right into finance, and I learned within about 2.5 years that this was not the path for me. And I kind of thought back to how I got to this point, and it was just by kind of following the herd. I kind of realized that now. And so don't be afraid to divert, because you know, they were big companies, big brands. I work at a great place now, but I know a lot of individuals that do their own thing, start their own company, start their own project, work for smaller startups, and it's all about getting those technical skills, getting that experience. Doesn't matter.
The trend these days is in products that are much smaller, and trying to get the design to work where the battery doesn't overheat or the transducers don't overheat and it still sounds good is an ongoing challenge. Manufacturing is moving more and more to outsourcing, and that poses usually a 12-hour shift in time. When you're talking to someone in a foreign country about manufacturing a new product, and then that has pros and cons. You know, there's definitely a cost benefit to it, but then on the downside, if something goes wrong, there's the challenge of trying to communicate that and rectify it before it gets too far out of spec. But the joy of my job, what makes me get in the car and drive through that tremendous traffic every day, is the freedom to solve that problem however we see fit. Whatever the challenge is, you bring to bear all of your experience, all of your mathematics, and you can develop an algorithm that very elegantly solves a problem. And that's to see that happen, and the joy that it brings customer is priceless. That's what motivates me. So.
Sure. I think some of the things that are really exciting about my role is that we spend a lot of time with customers and trying to understand, you know, what they want from our service and how to continually evolve it. And so the great part about our job is that we're always building. You know, we're building new things that are addressing actual pain points or opportunities from a customer standpoint. So we spend a lot of time actually in the field, for example, with people who are driving zip cars. We sit in cars and watch them drive and try to understand, you know, how are things working for them, and where are the problems, where do they feel confused, or, you know, don't have the information they need, or where might the trip be breaking down. And so the team then, you know, takes those real issues and tries to figure out solutions for them. So we're doing a lot of design work, both from an interface standpoint, but then also working with engineers on how can you improve the technology to make that experience better. The other thing I think that's really interesting about my role is that we're dealing with a variety of different technologies and components. So, and what we're trying to do is make a very complex service really, really simple from a customer standpoint, which in itself is a big challenge, because we've got people and cars moving around in all major cities in the US and now in Europe. And there's just so much complexity and a lot of unknown factors, you know, like traffic and things like that. So what we're trying to do is constantly figure out what can we predict and, you know, improve from a customer experience standpoint. But all of that has to be done within the context of, you know, designing and developing a great mobile app, a great website, a great in-car experience, a great experience if you need our help and call our call center. A great experience to make sure all the cars are maintained and safe and new. And so the complexity actually to me is very exciting, because there's never a dull moment at Zipcar. And anything that you think could go wrong in a Zipcar probably has gone wrong. So we have to constantly be on top of those things and figure out how to design the best experience possible.
What excites me about my role is, you know, foliage having the software background, we work with a lot of different customers, a lot of different markets. Semiconductor is one, for instance. We'll work with a lot of physicists. They know how to make a computer chip. They know what goes into that computer chip. They don't know how to make the machine that makes the computer chip. So that's where we learn their domain, their expertise, and then we map that to a software solution. So we're very good at understanding physical systems out there, and then creating products to implement those systems via software. And like I mentioned earlier, a lot of the verticals we deal with, it can be different. It might be aerospace, it may be medical, very, very different product to product. And so to have a chance to meet with different engineers from our customers, different end users themselves, that really makes it very fun.
So I guess I'll start with the latter part,
Yeah.
with the trends in the year. If you think about the fiscal year, the hiring trends kind of follow a bell curve along that. So kind of low in the beginning, January, February, you get a spike into March, April, May, June, July. Things start to slow down in August and September. And right now, people realize, oh wait, I still have 5 more people I can hire before the end of the year. And so now we're starting to see a tick back up. And that stops around the holidays. So between Thanksgiving and Christmas, things are pretty dull, but between now and Thanksgiving, things really expand. So that's with most companies that I've recruited for. That's the general flow of things, which is good for May and June graduates because you're graduating into a really busy time for recruiting. This should be no surprise to anyone sitting up here or anyone in the audience, but engineering and IT roles right now are incredibly hot. Some people have likened it to the dot-com bubble back in the late 90s, early 2000s. Not that there's a bubble, but just saying the level of hiring and the intensity of it, and really the competition amongst companies to hire people with your skills, I think is something that hasn't been seen in the past 10 years. Outside of that, more specific to candidates that have kind of stand out, if that's part of the question, and those that have worked on side projects, whether it's in school with classmates or outside of class, I find those that have side projects often do very well at Zipcar, whether that's an engineering role, a product role. They stand out more than those that have even had sometimes internships or co-ops, only because those startup projects often blossom into something real, and that's a lot longer than a co-op or an internship. And I find that those people often have great success.
So I guess the particular group I work in is very intertwined with Bose's research division. We're co-located with them and just down the hall. So we get a lot of cross-pollination that happens there that keeps it pretty lively. And I guess the influence that has on what we develop makes a big impact. So just being the conduit by which we bring that technology, make it realizable in a product so that's cost effective. That's usually the biggest challenge. Is when you're doing a consumer electronics product, it's cost is everything. So if you can find a way to do this with a less expensive bill of materials, then that is king. That's the challenge. So even though you have a very fancy algorithm that you can come up with and be recognized for that, if you can't implement it on a $2 computer chip, then it's not going to get shipped. Right? So I guess that kind of feeds the loop. Seeing the product ship, 10,000 units a month, or that gives you a lot of satisfaction. That this is the impact I made. So it's more of a self-satisfaction than being hailed, and carried around the company. It's knowing. I walk into a Best Buy, I see 3 of my products being displayed at the end cap. And, hey, I did that.
Yeah, from a visibility standpoint, so Zipcar is a smaller company, certainly maybe than both of these companies, and so I actually sit on the leadership team of Zipcar, and my boss is the chief executive officer, right? And so obviously there's a lot of visibility there because of that. I view it as a very positive thing, especially for being able to build a customer-focused organization that's designing a service that's really, based on what our customers want. So I've always, it's great to have that visibility, because it also means you have the backing of, you know, the most senior person in the company. Again, you know, on maybe not the negative side, but when there are problems, when there are problems, you know, the customers have, you know, I hear about it, right? So that, you know, I appreciate being in that role, because again, it gives us information that we can address and figure out how to design solutions for. Again, and just visibility within the company, in order for us to kind of get our jobs done, we need to work with all the different groups in the company, whether it's fleet or marketing or customer support. And so again, there's a lot of visibility, because as I said before, we kind of sit in the center of the company.
So as far as the visibility of my role, you know, I'm a senior software principal engineer. I'll lead a team of maybe 4 engineers, 10 engineers, depending upon the size of the project. And I'll be responsible for all aspects of that software development. Foliage's business is based on repeat business. There's only so many companies in the world that we can do work for. So if I do my job well, my team does their job well, we get repeat business. That makes a big difference to our business model. If we don't do well, that's one less customer that we're going to have going forward, and we even lose hundreds of thousands of dollars. So from that standpoint, it's pretty visible where we are delivery oriented. We have to deliver. I mean, we have a sales team, account management team that kind of handles a lot of the customer management and the promises as far as up front what we're going to do. But if the engineers on the backside can't deliver, we don't have business.
So it's interviewing 101. You probably have heard a lot of this in your co-op prep class, but it's doing your research on the company. And really what I look for a good product person or even a good marketing person for Zipcar is someone that either uses our product, or if they don't use our product, they know enough about our product, they've done their research, they've done their homework. If you think about it, you're going to be coming in to Zipcar, if you're doing product management, you're going to be working on our product day in and day out. And we like to see people that have passion for that, because if you don't, if you're like, oh yeah, I kind of like Zipcar, then you're going to be bored with the job. Our best product people are also our members. So our members often become our best product people. We're all members, I mean, all of us are members at Zipcar, of the Zipcar product, and you know, it makes us more effective product owners and product managers. So I'd say having a passion, a genuine passion for the product you're going to be working on. Having also, one thing that always stands out that I always ask individuals that have knowledge of the Zipcar product, I like to ask them, what would you change about anything we do currently? What would you change about our mobile app? What would you change about the in-car experience? They could have, whatever the idea is, it's great. You can say, you know, I want pink Zipcars. It doesn't matter. What I look for is your ability to think through and problem solve and draw out logic on a piece of our product. And so if you can have passion, if you know about the company, and you can come across as genuine, I'd say, you know, that's really what makes you stand out, in addition to the side projects and having the right, you know, technical skills.
Yeah, I would just add, especially at Zipcar in the product area, again, any work experience is really helpful, but I think one of the bigger things that I look for is someone who has the ability to work well with others and enjoys that, and you know, is interested in collaborating and building relationships. It sounds all very basic, but I'm always amazed, you know, that a lot of people either, you know, don't have that experience, or so, you know, to the extent you can build that type of experience and show it is a critical role, because when you're doing any sort of product design or product development, there are a lot of decisions that are going to need to be made along the way, and there are typically many different people with different objectives trying to make those decisions. So the people who I find are great hires and also very successful in the role are, you know, good at kind of building those relationships so that you have really constructive conversations around prioritization and problem solving and things like that.
Yeah, you can be a brilliant engineer, top of your class, but if you don't have the communication skills, your path is going to be limited. So it's very important to develop that aspect of your personal being as well.
I was talking to Leslie earlier of my experience as a co-op student in engineering. You know, I came out of freshman year, top of my class, I went to IBM Research, I thought, okay, that's it, my career is all set, this is it, this is what I want to do the rest of my life, and I did not like it. But, it took me 2 more years of co-op assignments there, wrestling with, geez, am I really giving up some opportunity that, am I being foolish by giving this, but my heart was not in it. And so co-op is a great way to find your muse, right? To find the thing that you're going to be passionate about. Don't stay in it because, hey, it's the #1 company. You got to, you're crazy to leave that. Co-op, you probably want to chase the money. My advice to you is don't. I made that mistake once. Never going to work for that company again. But the point though is really find out what you are passionate about. Clearly you picked a major. You're invested in that. So pick your co-ops accordingly. If you don't love going to your co-op job, find another, your next rotation, find another company to go to and that's doing something that you can be passionate about. That comes through on an interview. Like it is readily apparent when someone I'm interviewing is not passionate about it. A typical question I will ask, and it was asked of me by the senior scientist at Bose that hired me, was tell me about an interesting problem you solved recently that you enjoyed, that you actually, just describe it for me. And I didn't have to think. I knew exactly, as soon as he asked the question, I knew exactly what I was going to tell him. And up on the whiteboard, drawing it out, saying, yeah, and then I did this, and I found a way to, this pattern was happening, and we knew we could, avoid that pitfall, and that's it. It just poured right out of me, and that comes through. You can't fake that. So, and it doesn't matter if I got all the other answers to the questions right or wrong. I think they knew that, okay, we got something we can work with here. And that's
key.
Interview questions. One that I ask is, tell me about your values and some examples of how you represent those values. And people usually say, well, oh, personal or professional? And I say, whatever, tell me whatever you want. And so that's always, most people maybe don't think about that, I found, so it's a good question for you to think about. And to me, it just shows a lot about kind of who you are and how you think about work and how you think about commitments and deliverables and all that stuff. So it's kind of an open-ended question. Another is, tell me about something that didn't, a project or something you worked on that didn't go as you had planned. It didn't work the way you planned, and what did you do? What did you learn from that? That also just tells me a lot about problem solving, how you take from experiences and learn from them and apply that to the next thing.
Well, aside from the technical, so I'm sort of the sniper on the interview circuit. So we typically do a team, of 4 or 5 people, and it's an all-day affair. Mostly it's technical, but again, what comes out of it, I usually ask very leading questions. Well, I guess this is a good point. It's okay to say, I don't know. Yeah. Right? I mean, we're so afraid to say that we don't know something, right? But that brutal honesty pays dividends, even on an interview. I can tell you from personal experience. So maybe you want to follow that up with a question or clarifying question or whatever. But it's okay if you don't know. If you're trying to fake it, that insincerity is going to come through more than any of the words that are coming out of your mouth. And it won't matter if you have the right answer or not, because they're like, no, we can't trust you. So where do we go from there, right? So.
Yeah, on interviews, don't BS, because you'll get caught. I mean, I've actually been 5 minutes into an interview and just told the person we're done. Because I mean, they're not going to come into my company and know more about my company. So don't BS. If you don't know, it's okay to say I don't know. So I think, something that I learned, as an engineer, you're going to be focused on the problem. You've got to be aware of your surroundings, especially in foliage business. We've got to deal with customers. And there's no small customer, every customer, their problem is going to be equally treated. So I guess the lesson learned is, when you are working on a product, you might be behind on a deadline, and you might think, I'm just going to jump in, I'm going to get this done. Once I get it done, the customer's going to be satisfied. May not be the case, because in the course of ignoring them for a couple of weeks, they may have some concerns. So you've got to be aware of your surroundings, and it's not just about the engineering, it's about the people you work with, the people that you're developing the product for.
I think some of the things I wish I had known or thought about maybe have to do with what Jim was saying. When you are younger and you're in the MBA program, I also had a co-op, which was a good entree for me to get into high tech. But again, I was looking at it at that time as like I really wanted to get the Intel co-op, right? And because that was the bigger name and that kind of thing. And so looking back, my advice would be, or the key thing is that you're just getting experience and you're also trying things at that point in time. And so, to Jim's point, use it as a time to learn like what you like and what you don't like, because you have no, you don't know. And so don't assume, that's going to be your life or your career, but really use it as, a time to just use and learn a bunch of different skills. So I wish I had maybe gone into it with maybe more of an open mind.
Don't be afraid to divert your own path from the herd. So there's this idea of, oh, I got this great degree, I got to go work in finance or iBanking or consulting, and this is from my own personal experience, just to share with you. And and that's what I did. I thought I knew what I wanted to do, so I hopped right into finance, and I learned within about 2.5 years that this was not the path for me. And I kind of thought back to how I got to this point, and it was just by kind of following the herd. I kind of realize that now. And so don't be afraid to divert, because they were big companies, big brands. I work at a great place now, but I know a lot of individuals that do their own thing, start their own company, start their own project, work for smaller startups, and it's all about getting those technical skills, getting that experience. It doesn't matter where you get it. My focus, I don't usually look at the name of the company. I mean, yeah, if it's a big name, great, but it's not at the top of my list. I want to know, and as a recruiter, my job is to make sure that you can do this job, because it's my, it's the internal hiring managers like Leslie, they are my clients. So if I send them people that don't have the skills, can't do the job, it doesn't matter where they worked previously, they can't do the job that we're talking about. So it's important to just hone in on those. Don't worry about the name, don't worry about status, focus on getting your skills together, and then you'll be fine.
I guess more on like during the job, the things I've learned were, don't try to solve technical problems by email, and even worse, by group email. If it's an easy one-off question that comes into your inbox and maybe you can answer it by email, fine. If it's anything that's got more than a paragraph for the setup and then the question, phone call. Don't try to settle this over email. That's horrible. Email is it's played with so many problems, right? There's the whole written language thing, which can get misinterpreted, right? What do you mean by that? And then there's the latency, right? So you don't get an answer right away. So to be efficient, you figure, well, I'll load you up with all the information you need so that you can answer my question without having to do another round trip. And of course, that's where all the trouble lies. So really, seriously, phone call, link if your kids are into FaceTime, whatever to get that one-on-one, face-to-face, so you can read the expression, no latency on round trip time for getting an answer to a question. No, that's not what I meant. Great. You know how many pages of email that would have saved if I had heard, no, that's not what I meant, earlier on. I don't know if this is really career building, but it is something I've learned along the way, at least from engineering. So, but to Leslie's point, the face-to-face skills that you have with your coworkers, polish those now as on co-op, where there's plenty of opportunity. Look outside of your immediate job function would be my other piece of advice. I think the smaller companies offer that probably by necessity, right? You have to wear 3 hats because they only have 4 guys in the shop, or girls in the shop, sorry. That's another issue. Stereotypes. But right, so go outside of your immediate responsibilities. Maybe, look at what your boss is doing and say, well, maybe I could help out on something there, right? I mean, how great would that be if, as a manager, one of my employees said, let me take care of those reports for you. Thanks,
Yeah, so we, for example, we're working on something right now that is an enhancement to our service, and it's also, something that competitors offer. What we try to do, first of all, we try to focus on what we're doing. I mean, you can get sucked into what your competitors are doing. So that's just another balancing act, right? Because if you're just focused on what they're doing, then you're not focusing on building, something for your own customers.
So what little aspects I have from my marketing colleagues, I would say that your competition's probably already thought about this and haven't pursued it, and they're probably going to find out before you're done anyway. I've heard of stories of colleagues of mine who've left to go to work for Google, and for like the first year, they're put on this really top secret project, and they wait for a leak. The project actually isn't real, but again, it goes to the trust thing. If they get a leak, they know who it came from, and you're done. So I think you have to. I mean, that's sort of an extreme, right? But you have to put it out there. The few startup seminars that I've seen little bios for, they'll talk about, should I get an NDA from venture capitalists, so that they don't leak my idea? And inevitably the answer is, they're not going to steal your idea. Just tell them what your idea is. If you don't think it's a good idea, you wouldn't be pursuing it, right? So if it's a good idea and you are uniquely equipped to deliver it, then you've already got a barrier of entry for your competition, right? So if you've already been thinking about this for 6 months and now you're ready to do marketing research, you're already, leaps and bounds ahead of the competition in that respect. If they're even if they want it, they may not even want it. They may not cut out for it. So.
I'll just say that company size does matter, because there's going to be the opportunities first before you can take those. But once you find a company that there is enough variety in upward mobility, it's going to depend upon you. We have people that come in foliage. If they're young and bright, don't hold them back, but let them go. I mean, as far as they want to go. So, and I think that applies to non-engineering as well. If you have the skills that the company is looking for, they'll let you fly. I mean, I talk to my colleagues. A-level people hire A-level people. B-level people hire C-level people. C-level people hire D-level people. So you want to find A-level people. And if you're an A-level person, they know. I mean that you're capable, and they look at the big picture, and they will let you fly if you can provide something to that company.
And Matt, I think you look like you wanted to jump in.
So I feel like working at a smaller company, you're able to wear more hats, and that gives you a wider array of experience. From there, you can kind of figure out what you want to do. Which one of those hats that you've worn you want to kind of focus on. And then you can go and take that experience to a larger company. And from there, you can move up within a larger company. I think it's good to work at a smaller place, figure out what you want to do, and then kind of go from there. But you could also go the opposite way. You could start at a larger company, like what I did, and then go to a smaller company, like Zipcar, because you realize when you go to a larger place, you're more focused on one particular role. You specialize in something. And you might realize that you might want more task variety. Which is why I love Zipcar, because I can come in and I do a lot of different things throughout the day. I'm not just recruiting. So, whereas with other companies where I've recruited, it's been recruiting for this one business unit.
Yeah. And I wouldn't, I've done both, a lot of small companies. I worked at Microsoft as well, and so I wouldn't, have both experiences, right? And it does depend on what you want and what gets you excited. Because I could have stayed at Microsoft, and there are like all these places you can move up to, and But, you know, you're working, to Matt's point, you're working on a very narrow thing, like, you know, Microsoft Excel or something like that. And that wasn't for me, you know, I like a smaller company where you're building and there's a lot of variety. So it just depends on what you like, I